In other news, Dan Quinn is expected to be back as the defensive coordinator if he doesn't get a head coaching job. Which, by the way, if you're an owner, ask yourself this question. Are you hiring Dan Quinn over some of the candidates that are out there? Are you hiring Dan Quinn over a Vrabel, over a Belichick, over a Harbaugh, over a Ben Johnson, over Bobby Slowick, over McDonald from Baltimore? Are you going to hire Dan Quinn over any of these guys? Because I wouldn't. And I think you'd be crazy to do that. And honestly, if he doesn't get this Seattle job, I don't think he's going to get a head coaching job. I think that's his best shot. I don't think he's getting the job in Washington. I think that's going to Ben Johnson in Detroit. And what other jobs are there left for him to potentially get? He's going to be back with the Dallas Cowboys, guys. That is my prediction for this season. He will be the defensive coordinator of the Dallas Cowboys this year. And expect to see the same that you saw from this defense this year. You know, it's so funny. I hear so many excuses about Dan Quinn. You know, I love, well, what do you expect him to do about the lack of linebackers? I don't know. Play the linebackers that you have. Maybe not roll into the season with 3 linebackers on your roster. If you're a defensive coordinator and you see that many linebackers on your roster, you got to put your hands up and say, whoa. We can't do this, guys. Okay? We got to make sure that we're stocked at linebacker so that if, God forbid, Leighton Vander Esch, who was an injury-prone player over the course of his career, if something happens to him, we got to make sure that we have an adequate replacement for him. But they didn't have that. They rolled with 3 linebackers, and I was under the assumption, okay, they're going to play Micah more at linebacker. Nope. Didn't happen. Played a majority of his snaps at defensive end. And look, you know, there were some perks to keeping that many safeties. Right? Like they kept Wanye Thomas, who we all see. I mean, this guy is he's a top 3 safety on that football team. You know, I look Malik Hooker, Donovan Wilson, and then Wanye Thomas. He's the 3rd best safety on that team. Jaron Kearse. No, I'm done with Jaron Kearse. He probably won't be back with the team next year either if we're keeping it 100 here. You know, so that was the lone positive that came out of that. But you kept Israel Mukuamu on your team. Why'd you do that? If you weren't going to use him, which, by the way, I like Israel Mukuamu a lot. I think the guy can flat out play. And I saw him do it in the biggest moments for the Cowboys in the 2022 season. I saw him come out and play really good football against Chris Godwin. I saw him play good football against the San Francisco 49ers. Okay? So I need to know what happened for Dan Quinn to sour on Izzy like that, to the point where, like, he barely got any time this year. It's incredible to me. Israel Mukuamu is a guy that's like a Swiss Army knife, right? Like a guy like Dallas Goedert for the Eagles, I look at Israel Mukuamu and I say, yo, go handle that. Good length, physical, sticky in coverage against bigger receivers, whether that be big slot receivers or big tight ends. This guy can flat out play, and he didn't play it all this year. But if you were going to keep him on your roster, like, why not play him? And if you weren't going to keep him on your roster, and if, like, you risk linebackers at that point. 3 linebackers going into the season is unacceptable, flat out unacceptable. And, you know, that's a call that Dan Quinn made. You know, he had a horrendous game plan versus the Green Bay Packers. Just flat out horrendous. And at every turn, Matt LaFleur ran circles around him. He has a lot of problems with that coaching tree. He really does. And you want to know what the problem is? That coaching tree is taking over the NFL, guys. You're going to start seeing that within this division this year with Ben Johnson. I don't know if he comes from that coaching tree. I didn't look that up. But he does a lot of that Shanahan, McVay stuff. You know, you're going to see these guys for a long time here. We'll see what happens with Bobby Slowick and where he goes. Maybe he goes to an NFC team. And maybe you have to deal with that guy. But these guys aren't going anywhere, and it's very clear that Dan Quinn has a lot of trouble going up against that style of coordinator. You know, he did good against Sean McVay, no doubt about it, these past 2 seasons. He did. Shanahan, LaFleur took him to the cleaners. Mike McDaniel, even though the score didn't dictate it, took him to the cleaners. They did not play the level of defense that people thought that they did against the Miami Dolphins. They didn't. Tua didn't show up. I mean, Tua was not good that game. He showed up when it mattered the most. Tua was missing throws all over the field. Miami Dolphin receivers were dropping footballs all over the field. It was ridiculous that they were even that close in that game. You know, consistently struggling against good offenses. Like I said, that's something that I got jotted down in my notes here. Playing guys out of position. Marquise Bell is not a linebacker. He's not. He is a Jaron Curse type of safety. That's the role that Marquise Bell can play. And I think he's a really good football player. I do. But the thing is, they didn't put him in the best position to succeed. And to his credit, he tried. It's not like this guy went out there and lacked effort. Marquise Bell gave a ton of effort for the Cowboys this year. You know, he was a good asset for them. But when teams realized, hey, we have a 205-pound linebacker, let's run the football at him. And guys, here's the thing. Was he actually 205 pounds? Did he lose weight during the season? I mean, there's a very real possibility that this guy was under 200 pounds playing linebacker for the Cowboys. Just not big enough. And maybe that could work if you had a Mike linebacker that could deal with double team blocks so that you can keep a guy like that clean. But they didn't have that. Leighton Vander Esch, not a Mike linebacker. Neither is Damone Clark. And they play the same way, too. And it's very, discouraging to say. You know, Damone Clark, when he was at LSU, was downhill all game. Now he gets to the NFL and he starts catching people. It's a mess, man. You know, didn't adjust in big games. It didn't adjust at all. Like when offenses were giving them work, he made slight adjustments. Gilmore, go deal with DK Metcalf. Okay, like he made slight adjustments like that. But wholesale adjustments to where, oh, hey, Mikey, you're playing really good at my off-ball linebacker. Hey, go play off-ball linebacker. You know, things like that. Adjusting for having a lack of linebackers. Hey, Will, go get me some linebackers. I mean, are you trying to tell me that if Dan Quinn went up to Will McClay before the trade deadline, which, by the way, guys, Leighton Vander Esch got hurt before the trade deadline. They said that they were good with their team. They didn't make any moves because they were good with their team. Okay, so Dan Quinn okayed the fact that they had a lack of linebackers on this team. If he didn't feel like he had adequate linebackers on his team and enough depth at that position, then he should have went out of the way and said, hey, Will, we're light at linebacker. I need you to go get me somebody. And Will McClay would have went and got him somebody. There were linebackers on the market that you could have picked up. You know, but they had Rashaan Evans. Okay, and they didn't play him. And when they did play him, he showed some good things on tape, guys. So I'm really done with Dan Quinn. And this defense fell apart after week 13. You want me to go over some numbers for you guys? Shout out to Tom Downey at Chat Sports for bringing this up. Okay, since week 13, overall EPA on defense, 27th in the league, 0.078. Pass defense EPA, 28th in the league, 0.230. Run defense EPA, 16th, negative 0.102. Success rate, 27th in the league, 48%. Pass defense success rate, 31st in the league, 52.7%. Run defense success rate, 24th in the league, 42.4%. And this guy is going to come back and be the defensive coordinator. It's happening, guys. Sooner you prepare yourself for this disappointing news, the worse it's going to feel. Dan Quinn's going to be back, and there's going to be no accountability with the coaches. That defense was terrible versus the Packers. We could put as much blame on Dak as we want, but overall, the defense was the reason why the Cowboys lost this game. Did you guys see the defenses this weekend? Lions defense being able to make stops. Ravens, Chiefs, they were able to make some stops. San Francisco 49ers, all these defenses were able to make stops for their quarterbacks and their offense. Right? You put any of these quarterbacks in the situation that Dak was in, they're not winning that game. And Dak didn't play good against the Green Bay Packers, and we're going to get to him here quickly because I want to make sure that everybody gets their accountability. The biggest figureheads. You know, Jerry Jones, look, He put together a good roster. This is a good football team. My problem with Jerry Jones is the fact that this isn't a winning culture that he has here, and he's hiring bad coaches. Those are my two biggest gripes with Jerry. Outside of that, he has a great personnel department. They put a lot of talent on the field, but the coaches don't get enough out of that talent. So if I'm going to get on Jerry, I'm going to get on that. But I'm holding the three biggest guys that we see on the field every single week accountable. Mike, Dan, Dak. Those are the three biggest guys. And we're going to get to Dak here real quick. We're going to talk about his extension, but we're going to take a quick break here.